Ali, Palestinian-American activist and associate professor at Rutgers University. Nora, the images that we've been seeing for the past 6 days, both inside of Gaza and the images of what happened to the Israeli citizens, both have been so gut-wrenching, so difficult to watch. It makes it feel like there is an intractability to this fight. As you've been studying this, what can happen next?
Thank you, Katie. These are indeed gut-wrenching images, but they are also preventable images and preventable mass atrocities. The condition that the largest crime and the condition that sustains this violence is the crime of apartheid and the apartheid system that Israel oversees and that the United States has been the primary supporter of in military, financial, and diplomatic support. This is not something that can be solved militarily. This requires a political and a diplomatic solution, one that so many of us have been working towards. And yet what we're seeing in this very moment is a fomenting for absolute indiscriminate war crimes against Palestinians. You had a representative of the Israeli state on before you who was given a platform to talk about these military operations, despite the fact that Israel has targeted the Palestinian Red Crescent Society, has targeted sheltering the Palestinians, has targeted electricity sources, has targeted access to clean water, and yet here he is on your program justifying these war crimes, whereas you would never, ever allow a Palestinian representative of state, let alone of Hamas, on your program to talk about the military operations and justify them on your program. We have to be clear. If we want to protect civilian life, we want to protect all civilian life. If we want to apply the laws of war, then we apply all the laws of war across the board without exception. And unfortunately, we are hearing a very racist, dehumanizing framework that is justifying these war crimes against Palestinians.
Can you justify what you've been seeing happen to the Israelis? Can you justify the images of the babies?
Who justifies that? Palestinians are the people who have been protesting non-violently for decades. The Palestinian struggle for freedom is 100 years old, as they have been protesting against the usurpation of their land and their forced displacement. Hamas wasn't established until 1987. Palestinians have been protesting against the siege for 16 years. In 2018, 40,000 Palestinians marched week in and week out while Israeli snipers shot to kill them, as the rest of the world didn't even interview them or ask them about their nonviolent resistance or the barbarism of Israel's response. These are the Palestinians. 34 U.S. states have made illegal boycott, divestment, and sanctions, which is the quintessential nonviolent tactic, and yet we are castigated as being against peace. Palestinians are leading a freedom movement and a future for everybody.
Let me ask you, Nora.
You turn attention to Palestinians is in moments of these horrific mass atrocities where we're put in a position to have to discuss the violence against Israelis that are abhorrent. But there is violence against Palestinian daily, even when you can't see it in this sensational war.
So what do you do about Hamas? Is Hamas a government that is functional and should remain in Gaza? Do you think that there's a coexistence between the Israelis and the Palestinians with Hamas?
I absolutely believe in coexistence. There is only one future. We either all survive together in mutual existence, or we all die together in this mutual destruction. There is no way forward. We have all got to exist together. What is the U.S. and Israeli plan right now? What do they plan on doing? Invading all of Gaza and decimating it? How do you get rid of a fight for freedom? This is a freedom struggle. It's not just encapsulated in one political party like Hamas. It is encapsulated across the Palestinian diaspora, across all Palestinian political parties. You cannot extinguish a struggle for freedom. The demand is an end of the occupation for 56 years now, a demand of lifting of the siege 16 years now, and a demand of the end of 75 years of settler colonial removal and replacement. There is a political solution. Human rights organizations have mapped out a human rights path, which includes sanctions on Israel because of its apartheid policies, weapons sanctions that they cannot be using indiscriminately against Palestinians. There is a political pathway forward. We have been urging all to follow it. We have to allow for spaces of hope with dignity for all people. This cannot be ended militarily.
There are many people in Israel, there are many people in the Palestinian territories, West Bank and Gaza, who are all for that, who want that. And we've talked about the current Israeli makeup of the government and the inability of forging a path forward with Palestinians. We've done extensive reporting on that on this show for the past week. But I have to ask you again,
Wonderful.
What about Hamas? What do you do with Hamas?
Hamas was established in 1987 in the midst of what's known as the first Palestinian Intifada. They were established as an opposition to the Palestinian to Fatah and wanted to wage a liberation struggle. From the moment that the Oslo peace process was established, Israel began to besiege the Palestinians in Gaza by creating a perimeter around them. Hamas is a political party. We see them making political decisions as well. They've been portrayed as fanatical terrorists who are out there for primordial lust and violence and hate. And yet Hamas is a political party that has switched its allegiances. We saw them become a governing party and not just a resistance movement following the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. We saw them leaving Syria and moving to Qatar in the midst of the Syrian uprising. They are eligible to be part of a Palestinian unity government, which Israel and the United States have thwarted. We have to recognize that they are not going to disappear
with others.
We have to recognize
that
they are not
can
disappear
stay with others in a unity government. You think Hamas can stay?
Whether or not they can or cannot stay is not the issue, because the alternative of what you're saying is that we decimate Hamas. And I have to remind viewers, Hamas is a political movement comprised of Palestinians who believe in a freedom struggle forward. They are not merely these sensational images that you see. The members of Hamas that you saw recently, right? I just want to make clear to people that these are not monsters who emerged from underground just wanting to terrorize Israelis. These are young men who have only grown up under siege for the past 17 years, who have been subject to 4 large-scale offensives that have bombed them in their homes, that have targeted medics and hospitals and water supplies, that have refused them a future and told them that the only future they have is to remain in an open-air prison. We have denied them of hope. So when you say Hamas, we are actually talking about an entire generation of Palestinians who have been left and abandoned by the international community. I want us to shift away from focusing on a political party and remind people that this is about a Palestinian struggle for freedom. It far exceeds Hamas. It is not about Hamas. It is not about Gaza. It is about all of Palestine and all of Israel, and about a future for everybody.
Nora, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.